Welcome back to Philip's Hot Rod Garage. All right, guys, thanks for stopping in. I appreciate you hanging out with me another week at Philip's Hot Rod Garage. We're back on the 1928 Model A Special Coupe project again this week. In the last video, we put the body back on the 32 frame rails. So now we can get a good idea of everything that's got to be done to get this body and this frame fitting together like they should. So some of the things that are going to be coming up in future videos are, we got to modify the cowl, we got to put patches in the doors, we got to patch the quarters, we got to cut out the wheel wells and put new wheel wells in, we got to install new subrails in the back, we got to build body mounts, we got to square the trunk opening, get the trunk squared up, do some rust repair on the trunk, replace the rear body panel. Tons of work to do. All right, so what I'm trying to do is establish the center of my wheel well. So I'm just sticking the tire up there just to get a good idea of how the thing's gonna look. All right, so I think that looks pretty good. Now what we're going for right here is an even gap between the tire and the fender well all the way around. The tire and the wheel well, we want an even gap the whole way. I think that's the best way to make an old school traditional hot rod 50 style car. I think that's the best way to make them look. We're not going for that tire here sticking up above the quarter panel stuff that you see done on these modern builds. We're not looking for that. We're looking for that old school traditional hot rod look. Now when you back off and look at this, you can see immediately right off the bat that right there looks like some needs to come out. That definitely looks like it needs to be chopped. So that's the way I'm leaning. I'm leaning toward chopping it. We'll see. That'll be later down the road. We're going to think about that a while and talk about that a while. What do you guys think? Think it looks like it needs to be chopped? I think so, but we're going to sleep on that one. All right, guys, we can talk about that stuff later, but it's time to get to work. So let's put together a plan. Now that the body and the frame rails are back together, I know exactly the width of the frame across the cowl. It's easy to establish now. Since the cowl is solid, there's no more rust. I can tell exactly the width the frame has to be. I got the frame set pretty close at the back. I think I'm gonna have to make the rails go a little bit wider across the back. I can do that at any time. Everything's just clamped in place, so it's easy to move around. But what I do have to establish in this video is the position of the body from front to back. I talked to you guys in the last video about using the center of the rear wheel wells and the center line of the axle on the frame. Line those marks up to get this body sitting in its perfect position. So that's what we're going to do in this video. I'm going to get the plasma cutter, cut some of the rear wheel wells out so I can see my marks on my frame. And then I'm going to put some marks on the body in the center of the wheel well, or I may just use a measuring tape, measure it out. I don't know how I'm going to do it yet. You'll see as I'm doing it. But what my goal is in this video is to get the body locked down in place from front to back and get some marks so that I have a mark to go by so I can put it in the same spot every time I take the body on and off the frame. I just need something to go by. So that's what we're going to do in this video. So let's get started. All right, so this red mark is the mark we're going to be using. We're going to line the center of the wheel well up with that mark. All right, so let's find the center of the wheel well. Let's see what we're working with here. 34.5. Half of that would be 17.25 at the school I went to. 17.25. So we're going to put a mark right here. Measure it again from the other direction. See how close that 17.25 is. We're just eyeballing it. Yep, that's real close. So I can see now that my mark is almost at the front edge of this bead. So what I'm going to do now is go on the inside and line a little bit behind the front edge of that bead, about 1/8 of an inch behind the bead. I'm gonna line that up with the mark on my frame rail for my axle center line, and that should get me roughly in the right location. I'm behind the back edge of the bead, so the body's got to come back pretty good distance. Take a look at that. Real close, got to come back a little bit more. All right, now you can see the red mark is just behind the front edge of that bead there. It's just where I needed it to be. I'm gonna check the other side. All right, so on the driver's side, yep, pretty close to the exact same spot. All right, I'm gonna measure from that cross member back to the center line of the rear axle. And we've got 30 3/4. Check the other side. We've got 30 7/8. That's 1/8 of an inch different. So as you guys know, 1/8 is close. I can move one frame rail forward or backwards 1/16 of an inch, and that'll put that measurement within 1/16. So I'm really close. I think that's good enough in this stage of the game to get started cutting wheel wells out and try to get started putting subrails in. All right, so now that I got some of that stuff cut out of my way, I can see how this subrail is going to fit up in here. This will be the first time I've actually been able to get it put in here without having a bunch of stuff in my way that needed to be cut out. Alright, let's take a look at it. Well, it looks like it's going to work okay. Let's check it out from the front view. Well, I've been able to answer one of my questions I had, which was how far forward it was going to come. It looks like it's going to come all the way up to the floor brace here, which was what I was hoping it was going to do. Looks like it's going to come to the back edge of it right here. So that comes far enough forward that I'll be able to cut out all of this old rusty subrail. All right, so that leaves me where I don't have any more rust repair to do on the subrails at all. I'll just cut all that section out right up there. I'll cut the one out on this side. And then I'll get them where they fit back here at the back on both sides. That'll be all that has to be done on that. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and take this piece out. It's about rusted loose all the way around, so there's not much holding it. But I think if I get that out of my way, it'll be a little bit easier to get down in here to work, to try to get these to fit down in here. There's got to be some fitting done down in these corners. All right, so I got a brand new one to go on it. So what I'm gonna do is just go ahead and cut this thing off. Just go ahead and get it out of the way. I don't need it. This one looks like it's gonna fit up there pretty good. So I can use this one for mock-up purposes from this point on. So let's get this thing off here. That blade is dull. That blade won't cut hot butter. Somebody welded a big thick piece of steel in here trying to repair this where it was rusty. That's what I'm trying to cut through, and it's not wanting to cut through it too good. It's pretty thick. Plus, guys, if you buy your blades at Harbor Freight, you're probably not going to get very far with them. That's what I'm running into now. Old cheap Harbor Freight blades. Harbor Freight junk. All right, so this is a brand new Harbor Freight blade, and now it won't cut through hot butter either. I'll be buying me some different blades next week, I promise. This big thick steel that was in here and a couple of bolts I had to cut through just destroyed that one. All right, this thing's so rusty, I think I'm just gonna try to break it off. Well, that thing's a piece of junk. All right, so these bolts are so rusty, I'm not even gonna try to turn them and get them out. I'm just gonna cut them off and be done with it. Now I'm trying to save this lower piece right here, but there's some fasteners right in here, bolts that hold that rear body panel on. I don't know what's gonna happen with those. They're probably not gonna come out, so I'll probably end up just grinding them off flush with the panel. And then when I put the rear body panel on, put some other type of fasteners down in here to hold it. I may end up replacing these little inserts in here with some rib nuts, or I may end up welding that panel in. I don't know. Either way, I'm gonna try to save this piece right here if I can. So I'm just gonna get all the fasteners out the best way I can and see what happens. All right, I got the sides done. Got the fasteners out of there. All I gotta do is get this mess off the bottom down here now. This side's done. All right, let me get started getting that mess off. Ow! Hit my hand. This would be a whole lot easier if I'd brought my air hammer home from work. Ow! Get my hand again. Last piece. All right, so I got all the bolts cut off of that piece. And what I realized is that the quarter is not attached down here. And it's not attached on this side either at all. There's nothing holding the quarter to that piece. So the only thing holding this piece on the car now is just these two tack welds. Those tacks held up pretty good from me beating on it. So what I got to do next is got to get these pieces of old subrail out. Got to get that out both sides. And before I start messing with this piece too much, trying to fit those new subrails in, I might better just take this piece off, probably just cut these tacks, take it off, sandblast that piece, get it cleaned up, and make sure that that piece is not going to be just too rusty to use. Hopefully I can save it. At least that's the plan. Hopefully it works out. All right, now I'm gonna grind this stuff off right here. That's looking pretty good. Pretty good. Now I got a mess to clean up. Woo. All right, guys, that wraps it up for another video. I'm making steady progress on the car. Things are looking good. I'm really happy with the way this panel is fitting on the car. It fits better than I expected. I know there's some issues with the way this panel is made right through here. It's a little too flat. Got to have some more curve put in it. But I'll handle that when the time comes, when I get the trunk back on, when I can really see how to get those two panels lined up, the trunk and this panel. I'll fit them together and get that looking good. So that'll be a project for another day. So I think the thing to do in the next video that I work on the car will be to take this piece off, get it blasted, get it clean, get the bolt holes repaired so that this panel and this panel will bolt back together as they should, get them bolted back to the quarter panels using the bolt holes the way they go so that all that lines up perfectly before I get in here and start working on these sub rails. So tomorrow I'm going to spend some time with another YouTuber. We're trading on some equipment and some parts for the car. So we're going to try to get some footage at his shop to bring to you in the next video. So guys, I appreciate you stopping by, making good progress. Come on back. I'll see you guys in the next one.